afternoon. Welcome to Izzy's Crafty Bees. I'm Izzy Shashinsky. I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator from the UK. And welcome if you're joining me this Tuesday the 23rd of March 2021. It's my regular Tuesday lunchtime live and you're very welcome to join me. If you're watching me later or on a different date, maybe on catch up on Facebook or on my YouTube channel, then thank you again for joining me there, and please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. I'm just going to say hello. Hi, I can see Sylvia's joined me. I'm not going to spend too much time saying hello to people individually, but hello if you're joining me this lunchtime. And just a quick couple of happiness quota points to note. So things that have made me happy since we last met last week. Yesterday I had a fabulous walk. I met a friend, so it's so nice that some of our restrictions are relaxing a little bit and we're starting our journey out of lockdown, fingers crossed. So yesterday I met a friend and we had a lovely walk and a socially distanced picnic outside our cars in the car park. So that was fantastic. I've had chats daily, of course, with Mum. I've been out in the garden, and I think that my hours in the garden on Saturday made me happy, although it was spent weeding a very troublesome patch in my garden that is just really, really hard work, but I felt a great sense of achievement at the end of that. So yes, there are just a few things that have made me happy since we last met. One of the other things that's making me happy in anticipation is that tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. UK time, demonstrators across the world actually have access to a PDF version of our new annual catalogue, which will be going live on the 4th of May to customers. So it's a very exciting time of the year when we get our first glance at a new annual catalogue. That's the main catalogue with everything in. We get to see our new in colours. That's always exciting and the anticipation has been building already. And we get to see new stamp sets, new dies, new products, accessories, bling, all sorts. So it's incredibly exciting. It also happens to be my birthday tomorrow, so it's one of the best birthday presents that a Stampin' Up demonstrator could ask for, is a brand new annual catalogue. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I'll be chatting about that more as we go along. So in today's session I'm going to be making a couple of Easter cards. Both cards could actually have any greeting on, so not necessarily just for Easter. They don't have a religious theme, they just have an Easter greeting, and I want to use two different bundles or two different coordinating sets of stamps and matching dies. One from the annual catalogue and one from the January to June mini catalogue. And I'll be talking a bit about both of those sets of products as we craft. So let's get on with it. Let's do some crafting. I'm going to spin the camera around as always. Bear with me while we have a little bit of wibbly wobbly and we'll get some crafting done. So let me just switch the camera. There we are, and let's turn and have a look at my workspace. Let's see what we can get in shot and make sure we're nice and level and straight. Let's go over there a little bit, I think. Still don't think I'm straight. Apologies for wibbly wobbliness, but I think we've got a good work area there. So as always, find me across social media. If you're ordering from me and you're local, then please just message me your order. And I'll be putting in March's big order next week, so you can start to message me now with your orders if you're local, and you will receive doorstep delivery. If you're not local to me, you can shop with me online at any time, izzyscraftybees.stampinup.net, and if you're shopping currently in my online store and your order is less than £149 or £150, then please use this code when prompted, SBSQMD7P. And this code changes on a monthly basis, so if you enter this code and your order is over £25 but less than £150, I will send you a free gift in April. Thank you for that. So let's get on. So a little word, just a reminder about catalogues. This is our current annual catalogue, which will cease and the new one will start on the 4th of May. This is our seasonal or mini catalogue, and this has been running from the beginning of January, and this runs to the end of June. So we have a bit of an overlap and we have a bit of a transition period. Tomorrow evening, when I get a glance at the new PDF version of the new annual catalogue, then I will also have a list of retiring products. So you'll be able to see what's retiring. You'll be able to order some of those retiring products. So I'm just showing you 3 cards at the moment. I'm showing you this one, and they're the ones I took a photo of and advertised as today's live. But I want to show you this one that I did, same but different, just a different colour, and I'm actually going to make this card with an Easter greeting. So this actual colour combination, I felt it was maybe a little bit more spring-like, perhaps a bit more Easter-like, but just to show you that the same stamp, same dies, just a different colourway can look really different. And then this one I wanted to show you because this is from the January to June mini catalogue, and this is a product that I got and had previously overlooked in the catalogue. I'll talk to you more about it as I demonstrate it. And I wanted to have a go at making a wreath shape from the die, and I will talk to you a bit about that when we do that. 1 second. I'm going to do this card first. So before I do anything, I'm actually just going to, clean my glasses. I've just popped my glasses on and realised I've put big fingerprints all over them. So let's have a look. So I'm going to move this one out of the way entirely because we're not going to go down the purple route. We're going to go down this lovely spring yellow colour. So the products that I've used in this card are the Bloom and Grow stamp set and the matching dies, and they're called Budding Blooms, and they are in the annual catalogue, and I will just show you, let me give you a call out. So I'm using the index because we have a handy index in the back. So I'm looking for Budding Blooms. Oh, if I can find them, hang on. Bloom and Grow, page 116. And let's have a look at, so Bloom and Grow. Not available as a bundle because these have been in 2 catalogues now. So the stamp set is £24 and it has 13 images in the stamp set, and I'm showing you them this way because it's a bit easier just to see them, all the different images and sentiments that are included in this stamp set. And just something to point out while we're looking at this page, if you look at the annual catalogue or any of our catalogues and you see images that are greyed out like this, you'll know that each one of these images actually has a matching die. And something else you may not be aware of, but all of our images printed in our catalogues are always shown at 100% size. So you can see that that's the stamp, and you can see that they're actually shown at 100% size, unless in the writing at the bottom it actually says differently. But the majority of the time all of our images are actually shown at 100% true representation of the size of the stamp. You may not be aware of that. So £24 for the stamp set, and we'll just go and have a look at the actual dies there on page 180. And we'll just have a look at my very dog-eared catalogue, and we'll look at the dies. This Budding Blooms die set, and that's £31 for the dies. And there's this symbol in the catalogue, and that denotes the fact that all of the dies included in the set can be used with the mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And I will just show you the dies in the packet because I want to point out these dies. So all of these dies cut round images, and then these are additional. So these cut like a scalloped edge line, so it can be used for cutting a slit in your card and actually popping, let me get that out, popping, so I could have cut a scalloped edge slit in my card and poked the flowers behind, or you can simply use them to cut a scalloped edge on your card bases. So quite a handy die to have. And then this little die which cuts these cute little flowers, and we're going to use this one today. So I'll just pop those to one side and we'll start having a look at what materials I'm going to use. So I've cut myself a very vanilla thick cardstock base, and I've cut it half of A4 down the long centre, so that's 10.5 centimetres across, and then I've actually scored it at just shy of 15 centimetres, which makes my landscape card stand up. This one that I made earlier was also folded on the same way. If I remember, I always fold them this way for a landscape card because they do stand up a bit better than the tent fold, which tend to just collapse. I've cut myself a layer of Saffron cardstock, and I think from memory that is 13 centimetres by 9.5 centimetres. I've cut myself a piece of old olive cardstock for the next layer, and that's about 5 centimetres. I think it's 5.1 or 2 inches, because I'm actually going to use a punch to shape that on the ends, and in terms of length I've cut that to 12 centimetres, and that will shrink a little bit when I've punched it. I've also got myself a couple of pieces of scrap that I'm going to use to stamp my image on. So let's sit down. I'm going to take a seat, so I won't be seeing your comments for a moment or two, or for a little while. I'm going to use my Stampin' Pierce mat because this stamp is a large surface area and it's a photopolymer, so no sponginess on the stamp, and so I need to get the sponginess from my Stampin' Pierce mat, and I'm going to stamp that using Memento. I'm going to colour the images using my stamping blends. So let's just fetch this in. I'm going to take my time and really ink this stamp up. So I'm taking my ink to the actual stamp and moving that around, and the reason I'm doing that is because this ink pad is smaller than the actual stamp surface area, and it's just easier to take my ink to the actual stamp. Now, because Memento ink pads are stored this way, that's why I'm really going to town with inking and making sure I'm really tapping. The tapping motion makes a capillary action and it makes the ink rise to the surface. Impressive science, or not, as the case may be. And let's go ahead and stamp. I'm just going to put some even pressure all over the stamp and just breathe in and breathe out and let the ink actually make good contact with the cardstock. And now we've got a nice dark image, and I'm going to do that again a second time because I want 2 images just the same. And so while I'm doing this, what's made you happy this week? What have we all been doing since we last met? Hope you've been enjoying the sunshine wherever you are. We've had some nice sunshine recently. A couple of grey days, but I actually sneaked out for an hour and a half in the garden this morning, so I'm maybe a little less prepared than ordinarily on a Tuesday. So 2 lovely stamped images. I've stamped close to the edge because I'm mindful that I might need a bit of, well, I will need a bit of vanilla for a sentiment, so I'm being a bit frugal there. I could potentially have squeezed them, I don't think. No, maybe not squeeze them both on one. So I'm going to colour them in now. So you can talk amongst yourselves while I do some colouring technique. Now, I actually picked up a tip from another demo friend of mine, fellow demo, who said if you're going to do some colouring in and you're going to die cut, do the die cutting first, because your die might slip in your die cutting machine and you've spent all that time colouring in. So I'm going to actually go ahead and do that die cutting. Now I've got my big machine. Let's bring in my big machine. I've got my small machine here, but I'm not sure. Let's have a look. Let's see if I can get that piece of cardstock through. Let's have a look at my little machine. Yes, that will go through. Let's use the little machine. Now, I take my time and care with my little machine because the plates do tend to have a bit of a swivel on them, so I don't want that to jump. Let's just line that up. There we go. So I thought that was quite a handy tip. I've always just stamped, coloured and then die cut. I thought that was quite a handy tip. So shout out to Julie Kettlewell. Thank you, Julie, for that tip. She's absolutely right. Who would like to spend time and care colouring an image to then die cut and have the die actually move in the machine and not get a good result? She talks a lot of sense, that Julie. It's because she's a Yorkshire lass. Right, let's just pop that machine back over here. So I'm going to just grab a piece of scrap grid, and I'm just going to double check that that grid paper isn't making my camera zoom in and out. I'm hoping that that's not interfering with the picture. That's lovely. I think we're okay. And I'm going to use my Stampin' blend, so I'm going to use a little bit of Old Olive just for the leaves. I'm going to grab some Daffodil Delight for the flowers, and I'm going to grab some, let's have some pink. I think this is Flirty Flamingo. And I'm not going to take forever to do this. I'm just going to go in and colour in fairly quickly. Now on my original card I'd stamped on Whisper White, and I've chosen to use Very Vanilla as I'm using a very vanilla card base. You can see my Stampin' blends have gone a little bit fluffy on the end, and I'm starting off with light colour as always, and I'm just scribbling that colour onto the stamped image. I'm not going to what's the word? I'm not going to tell you any other method other than I'm just scribbling to lay down a base layer of colour. I'm trying to stay obviously within the lines, but there's no blending or shading or anything fancy going on. I'm simply popping down a layer of first light colour. Now Stampin' blends are not refillable, they're a consumable item, so they do dry out eventually. They also go a bit fluffy on the ends, particularly if you use them for colouring over gemstones, rhinestones for example. So what I'm going to do with that one, something that you can do, is give them a bit of a trim, a bit of a haircut. It will just give you a bit of longevity. So I've just cut some of that fluffiness off the end. And we'll just see, just gives you a bit more precision back on the pointy end, and I can also feel that the ink is flowing through that end. So if they get really fluffy and tatty, don't be afraid to give them a haircut, and don't forget that we've also got the bullet end, so if you want to go right up to the edges. But again, I'm not going to spend all of my lunch break and all of your lunch break showing you how to do precise colouring in. So I've put down a layer of light Daffodil Delight, and now what I'm going to do, just to give it a bit of tone, light and shade, is I'm going to go around with the dark one just in a few places, like around the edges, maybe in the centre of the flower, around the edges of some of the petals. And this isn't an art class, it's a craft class, or it's a craft demonstration, so I'm not going to talk too much about being fancy. You know, just have a go with these blends. They're so easy to use, really forgiving. If you don't get on with any other markers, just have a go. And yes, the price point may be a bit higher than the water-based markers, but you can buy them in pairs and you can gather your collection quite simply. You know, have something from the blue family, something from the green family, and just start a collection and add to it as and when you can. But they really are dead simple to use. So I've added a bit of light and shade there, not too tricky. I'm going to go around now and just colour in all the little flowers. Actually, I think I'll use the bullet end because they are really small. Let's colour in those little buds. Oh, it's lovely to see the blossom on the trees. And has anybody spotted that there's blossom watch going on? It was something I spotted on the TV. I was watching a film, and at the start of the ad break there was something by the National Trust, and there's a hashtag blossom watch. So I was using that hashtag on some of my Instagram posts. Which is quite nice if you like nature and you like being outdoors like I do. And as I was walking yesterday with my bestie Alison, we spotted some nice blossom in the park. So one of my photos is some blossom. I've not posted my pics yet because I've just not had a minute. It was a lovely walk. We went round Rufford Country Park, where I'd been a couple of weeks earlier with another good friend, Helen. Unfortunately, Helen and I got a bit drenched in the rain, and Alison and I had the sunshine yesterday, and it was glorious. Watching the birds, and yeah, just generally enjoying real life company of a friend, not just on a video call. Hopefully you can see just how quick that is. I'm going to just nip in with the dark one and maybe just pop a bit of shade on each one. Again, I'm not taking too much time. Or too much care, to be honest. It's just really quickly. Let's just work quickly. And of course, remember, I always say, you know, what's your focal point? And the focal point of this card is the flowers. And I just want to demonstrate how you can work really quickly with these blends. So if you are making a whole stack of cards for an event like Easter or Christmas, dare I even say the Christmas word, and it's only March, or maybe invitations, you can add beautiful hand-coloured images without it having to take all of your time. Now I'm going to go in and just finish these leaves. Finish off by doing the leaves. This is such a lovely stamp set. This was one of my favourites when it came out. I think it came out in a spring catalogue, I might be mistaken, then carried over into an annual. I feel I've used it well, but I still don't feel I've used it enough. It's just really unusual, I think. We have a lot of floral stamp sets. What can I say? I love flowers. Can't have too many. And each one, you know, at first glance you think, oh, a lot of floral stamp sets, but they each tend to do just something a bit different. So it's really worth looking at the stamp sets and thinking, what do they do? What does each one do? Does it have dies? Does it have a punch? Is it on its own? So there we go. Quickly coloured in, let me move that grid sheet. Quickly coloured in a couple of images using blends. Really simple to do. I could go back and take a bit more time, but I'm not going to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of old olive cardstock. So let's remind ourselves of the measurements. That 12 centimetres long by 5.1 wide, and I'm going to use our tag topper punch. These are fantastic for not just for making tags, bookmarks, gift tags, but they're really great for using with ribbon, and that's how I wanted to use it in this application. So I'm going to punch both ends. Those bits, and now I'm actually going to add some texture. I'm going to use an embossing folder. You might not be able to see it on my original card. If you look carefully, I've just added a bit of texture to that. I could put some texture onto this next layer, but I want to add some texture onto the tag. So I'm using the, I've forgotten what it's called, embossing folder. That's really fabulous. Let me just see. Oh, embossing folders. Luckily, I always put little tags on my catalogue. So it's not the subtle. Tasteful Textile. It's the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder. So I want to just point out that it's a Stampin' Up 3D embossing folder. So the 3D means that you get even more texture. It's a really nice deep emboss, and I have started to write on my embossing folders a reminder to put my hinge forward through the machine and which plates I need to use with my new machine, because I have a mixture of Stampin' Up manufactured embossing folders and the Stampin' Up branded but previously manufactured by another manufacturer embossing folders, and they need a different sandwich. So I am just going to bring in my large machine with very dirty plates. I'm going to use platform number 1 and plate number 4, and just make my sandwich like this. Go. And that just gives this a really lovely textile impression emboss. And even though I'm going to actually cover up quite a bit of that with the sentiment and the flowers, I still think it adds a bit of texture there. So ultimately I'm going to add my flowers like this with the sentiment in the middle. So we can get together now and get on and actually start to assemble this card. Now on my original card I used our vanilla metal edge, gosh, I can't remember what it's called, metallic edged vanilla satin ribbon, but I've just got this ribbon and I've not used it yet on a project, and this is from the January to June mini, so I'm going to use this one. And before I start sticking anything down, I'm going to actually show you how I put the ribbon round. So the ribbon goes round my layer, my card layer, and then it goes through the tag topper, oops, fumble fingers, from the front to the back, and then out at the other side, and then I can tie my bow to this side. Now before I do any tying, I'm just going to position it and get my ribbon to the right sort of length. So there's a bit of faffing with your ribbon just to make sure you've got enough to tie that knot. So I just want to come through a little bit more, round to the other side, and I should have, not behaving, should have enough now to tie my bow at this side. So now I know I've got enough, I can lay that to one side, and I'm going to pop a couple of dimensionals on the back of here to pop it up. And I'm just having a look at how many I've still got left in the graveyard. So I'm still using up my pieces of dimensionals from the dimensionals graveyard over here. There's another bit for the bin, that's great. I might just be able to celebrate and open a new packet of dimensionals soon. If you've been watching me recently, you'll know I promised myself that I would not open a new packet of dimensionals till I'd used up all of these bits. And I'm just amazed at how long they're lasting. So now I can lay that back down. Let's get hold of this and make sure it's in the right place. And in fairness, my ribbon, oh, it does help if you take the backing off. Good grief, what am I talking about? Thinking, why is it not sticking? Where's my head? I think it's still outside in the garden. In fairness, I should be able to still run my ribbon through like so. So now I can tie myself a knot and a bow. So again, I'm tying my knot. So I've got my tails north and south. I bring my south tail up into a loop, pinch it, take my north round the back and through the hole and pull that side to side. Give that a good pull, and then I can faff and get the bow to the right size. And it's all about the faff. Oh, I do like this ribbon, it's quite nice and grippy. Now, do I want my bow to go, let's have my bow going up and down a bit. There we are, and let's trim that off. It's quite nice and grippy, it's not too slidey. Let's pop those to one side. And the other thing I like about this ribbon is it does have those metallic threads running through it, so if we want a bit of metallic thread, we can pull some out of the ribbon and we can use a bit of metallic thread on projects. And I, for one, miss the metallic thread that we used to have in the previous annual catalogue. I used to use it quite a lot on projects. It just gave a little pop of sheen in a very subtle way. Just faff. I'm just going to keep faffing with this bow until I've got it laying the way that I want it to. That's what the problem is, that tail's the wrong way up. There we are. Okay, so I'm happy with that now. Let's get that in the right place. And I can stick this entire layer, to my base card now. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I use some wet glue for this. You can use whatever glue you're happy with to stick your layers down. If you've got ribbon going round a layer, it doesn't matter if you use wet glue or dry glue, because you're actually sticking cardstock to cardstock. Let's go this way a little bit. So just a reminder, this is So Saffron, the yellow, and the green is Old Olive, my favourite greens. And interestingly, Old Olive used to belong to our Brights family, and it moved across to the Regals family when we had a colour refresh a few years ago. And I'm going to stick my flowers onto the top of that label, and because I've got enough space, I can either move them right up to the top so that these points are level with this card edge, or I can tighten them up and pop my sentiment in the middle. So talking of sentiment, I'm going to bring back in my piece of almost scrap, very vanilla, and I'm going to use a sentiment from another stamp set. Now, Timeless Tulips is a stamp set that was in the spring mini catalogue last year and moved across into the annual catalogue when the current annual catalogue went live. And I like this Happy Easter, Happy Spring, Happy Everything. I really like that sentiment. For me, it resonates. It's a really happy celebration of Easter and celebration of spring. And I, how can I say this? I looked through the catalogue and I wasn't really blown away too much by the specifically Easter stamp sets. And Easter for me is something that's, it's a celebration, and it's a celebration that's here and gone, a bit like Christmas. I don't get overly giddy about Easter. So I didn't want to invest in stamp sets that were overtly or specifically just for Easter. So I like a stamp set that has a mixture of sentiments and one that I can use for lots of different occasions. And so that's why I really like the Timeless Tulips, because we have Mother's Day, birthday, hello, get well soon, a sympathy sentiment, and you know, I mean, this one, what a difference, what a beautiful difference one single life makes. I mean, that could be just saying thank you for being my friend. It could be celebrating a birthday, the birth of a child. So I really liked this set in particular for that mixture of sentiments. So for this sentiment, I'm now going to trim that down. I'm just going to bring my trimmer in. So I'm going to use a different punch, and I will just trim that down. So same as last week, I'm going to line up, oh, not on that line. I'm using this line here on my trimmer. This is the cutting line down the middle, and I'm using this line here because this is transparent, and I can line the top of my sentiment with that mark on the trimmer. Then I can turn it round and I can look at where my cutting line is again, and I can use either, let me just do that again, I can use either this line on my trimmer, or I can now use the grid lines actually on the trimmer base, which is what I'm doing. I'm going for a grid line there, and I'm going to trim that down. So I've now got my sentiment, and I know it's straight on this piece here. And what I'm going to do then is bring in my fancy punch, and I'm going to punch the ends, but first I'm going to actually trim that end off so I've got equal space on each end. And I'm going to use this one, and as always with this punch, I always flip it over and make sure I'm lined up nice and square, and just feed that back in. And there we are, we've got a nice sentiment to pop in the middle there. So pretty simple. I'm going to adhere my flowers to this layer, and I'm actually going to use a wet glue again because this is a nice textured layer now, and I'm just going to put some wet glue along the bottom of that image And because of the texture, the Tombow will stick really nicely because it will run into the texture and make really good contact with the cardstock. So I'm just lining them up. I'm looking at making sure that they don't protrude beyond my card base, but I'm leaving a nice gap in the middle. And I'm also going to stick my sentiment down flat, no more dimensionals, and pop that in the middle. And I'm going to finish off with 3 little flowers from the dies. This little die here cuts 3 little flowers at the same time, so I'm just going to go and find a piece of scrap. I thought I'd got some out, some daffodil, not daffodil. I've got a little scrap of Saffron, and I will just run that through my die cutting machine. I'll just use a little one because it's perfect size. And I love this little 3 flowers together die because it's one pass through your die cutting machine and you get 3 little flowers. They're ever so sweet. So we'll just have a look at those. Very cute. And just to give them a tiny bit of dimension, just bring our Stampin' Pierce mat in, just use the edge of it, and one little pop in the middle of each one, just to give them a little bit of dimension. And I use the edge. I mean, my Stampin' Pierce mat's pretty well used, and I wanted to keep it as flat as possible, which is a bit impossible at the moment because it's slightly well used. And I'm just going to stick those on somewhere around here. Let's pop those on there. Just to finish that card off. I think that one might... rid of that piece of glue. That might look nicer actually overlapping and going on to my sentiment, and we'll just pop that on there. And I've got somewhere I've got this lovely ribbon with gold in, so I've pulled out my metallic pearls just to finish it off. Let's see if I can use my take your pick tool for these. These metallic pearls come with a sheet of silver and a sheet of gold. Oh, I seem to have 2 stuck to my finger. And let's see if we can just use those gold ones because they tie in nicely with that metallic ribbon. Sticking to my finger because I've got glue all over my fingers. There we go, that just finishes that off. I hope you've enjoyed that card. So quite a bit of technique involved. We've got stamping, we've got colouring technique, we've got embossing technique, we've got punching, die cutting. So quite a lot going on. However, I hope that you will agree with me that it didn't take too long and it wasn't too complicated despite all of the different techniques. Now let's have a look at the second card. Let's pop those to one side and let's have a look at the second card I'm going to show you, which is this one. And again we're going to use a stamp set and dies, and this time are available as a bundle. To one side before I lose the dies. So this time these are available as a bundle, and I'm going to show you them in the January to June mini catalogue. And again we have an index in the back, so if you're looking for things always go to the index. So Flowering Vine, page 62. Now this was a set that I totally overlooked. totally glued my pages. So page 62, totally overlooked. It didn't grab me at all. I don't know why, just really overlooked. But look how beautiful these dies are. Really love the stamp set. The sentiments in the stamp set, the font is absolutely stunning. And again, we've got sentiments for all occasions: birthday, a general hello, a thank you, sympathy, thinking of you, and congratulations. So we've got good size sentiments. We've got this wonderful image here that's an outline image, and there's a matching die, because as you can see, these images here that are slightly shaded have matching dies, and we also have these large dies, these large lace dies, which I'm going to show you. And I've used the circle lace die and made it into a wreath shape. So these are available as a bundle when you save 10%. And the stamp set that has 14, and they're cling, they're the red rubber cling, 14 stamps, images and sentiments, and the die set that has 11 dies in it, and the bundle price is £51.25. So that's in the January to June mini catalogue. And I have to say a massive thank you to my upline, Monica Gale, because Monica had posted a picture of a card that she'd made using this, and I just didn't recognise the stamp set at all, and had a quick look through the catalogue and spotted it and thought, I've got to get that. And it was this die that she'd used. This really, look how big that is in terms of size against a regular card, and you get to make that lace layer. It's fantastic. I'm going to use this one today, and you get the flower outlines, and you also get an oval and this one that cuts the sentiment. So just a super set. I'm absolutely in love with it, and so I've only just got it. It will be here until the end of June, but I'm really hoping that this one carries over into the new annual catalogue. So let's have a look at what I used to make this card. Let me gather some materials. So again, I used a piece of very vanilla thick cardstock, and I made my card base the same way. Cut my piece in half lengthways, so 10.5, and I scored at 15 to make my card base. I've then got a piece of old olive, and that's 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres, and I'm going to do my die cutting. And I've got myself a piece of Daffodil Delight bright yellow cardstock just for this sentiment layer. I'm probably going to do that a little bit different. I didn't quite like the way I'd stamped that, so I'm going to do that a little bit different on this card. I also needed a piece of very vanilla scrap on which to stamp all of the little flowers that I've decorated the wreath with. Now you'll be pleased to know that I pre-stamped them and pre-die cut them. So let's go back to the dies and have a look at those flower dies. So for this small flower, there are actually 3 dies, so that you can do 3 flowers, stamp 3 flowers, and one pass through the machine cuts you 3. For the other flowers, the other flower images in the set, you only get 1 die. So I wanted 3 of these and 3 of these, and no, 3 of these and 3 of these, stamping and die cutting. So just to save me that time and save you the boredom of watching me use my die cutting machine, I've pre-done them, but I will go to my machine and die cut the actual lacy piece. And I'm going to bring in my big machine for this one. For die cutting, I'm going to use the number 1 platform, number 2 shim layer, and 2 die cutting plates. I'm just going to come back because it's easier for me to get that off the plate this way, and you will see immediately, actually I'm going to lift that plate off, just move the machine out of the way, and I'm going to bring in my new latest favourite toy, because you'll see immediately that that's cut and leaves the die really well. There's only a few little pieces left in the die to pop out. You'll see just how nicely this falls away. And to expel all these little bits, I'm just going to leave the plate there because it might just help me to gather them all together. Just carefully remove the ones that are around the leaves. And then with a simple rub with my fingers, usually the other bits just fall away. You can give them a gentle flick and all of those little bits just pop out really easily. And so my favourite tool at the moment is my lint roller that just picks up all those bits. I can't believe I've never used that before. It's so fantastic. Okay, so you can guess the rest. I trimmed away some of the flowers in the middle, just these two flowers in the middle, to make myself a wreath. But before I did that, I actually stamped the base card. So this is a very simple, it's not a single layer card, but I haven't used another mat or layer or topper. So I'm going to stamp that flower across my base card, and I'm going to use that image and So Saffron, so it's the paler yellow So Saffron ink, and it's this image from the stamp set, and I'm just going to stamp some random flowers. Before I do that, I'm just going to find my piece of grid sheet again. Apologies, I do tend to bury everything whilst I'm crafting. So I'm going to see how my card's bouncing. I don't want smudged flowers, so I've just used my bone folder to really burnish that crease, and that helps my card to lay flat and stop bouncing. If it was bouncing, it would be coming up to meet the stamp, and the danger is that I would get some blurred images. Now I know that my So Saffron ink pad really could do with a re-ink, so I'm really tapping it, and I'm just generally doing a sort of random, almost zigzag all the way across. And just a tip, if you're going to stamp right to the edge, don't be afraid to do part images. To the eye, it actually looks more interesting than a really even and equal pattern. And I could build this up with the other small floral images in another colour, so I could almost make my base card into my own DSP, my own designer series paper, or my own patterned paper on the background. I just wanted it quite subtle, and I felt that that was enough just to take the blank bareness of the actual card base away, just to give it that little subtle pattern in the background. Now I'm going to bring back in my die cut piece, and I'm going to take my snips, and I'm going to snip away these two flowers in the middle. And what will happen is, I think my wreath actually, my original one, I think it actually separated once I'd, yes, it's here. When I release this one, it kind of separates. But no worry, I think I actually took that. I've now got two spare flowers with leaves. No worry, because we're actually going to stick that to our base anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that to my base. It doesn't matter which way around you do that. And I'm going to just add little dots of wet glue to the back to stick it down. So just handle it quite carefully. And just find a few areas where you can add a very small sort of spot of glue. And again, you don't need to go too much, you just need it to adhere to the card base. But actually what you can do, if you don't stick it all, is you can lift up some of the parts of the wreath just to get a little bit more dimension and height. Well, dimension really. Let's pop that down. I want it to be fairly central. Ooh. Come back. Being a bit heavy-handed there. There we go. And there we've got a pretty wreath from that circle. Almost like a doily, lacy circle. And we can now decorate it with our other little flowers. So I've stamped these flowers. Let me take away this grid sheet just in case it's making the camera go blurry. I stamped these flowers. I stamped these 3 in Mango Melody. They're maybe a little bit brighter than my original actually. I stamped 6 of these teeny tiny ones using Poppy Parade. And I stamped 3 of these again in Saffron. And as always, let's put some dimension to these. So I'll bring in my trusty old whiteboard rubber and let's just pop them on there and use the ball-ended tool if I could find it. I've just had it a minute ago. There it is. So it's the ball-ended scoring tool. Just a simple press down on each of these. There's nothing too technical. You don't have to go mad and do anything too dramatic. But just that one simple press down makes each flower come to life. It pops up. So here we go. Do you think we could use hashtag Blossom Watch for these? And I'm just going to decorate the wreath quite randomly, and then I'm going to add a sentiment, and I can save these 2 that I've cut away maybe for a future project. So remembering I'm going to pop a sentiment on, I'm going to leave this area free. In fact, I might just pop my sentiment on first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my label punch. I think this is classic label punch. And then I'm going to stamp the same sentiment, Happy Easter, Happy Spring, Happy, Happy Everything. Remembering that I stamped that in Old Olive last time. So I'm just going to clean that off quickly. And I'm actually going to go for, I don't like the red. When I looked at this again, I wasn't happy with the red. So I think what I'm going to do is actually stamp that in black. Let's just go classic and stamp that in black onto the Daffodil Delight. Now I went for Daffodil Delight as a brighter yellow, even though I've not used Daffodil Delight ink anywhere on the project. And I'm going to just take Happy Easter from the sentiment. I'm going to just really simply, let me just trim that down a little bit. I'm going to really simply take the Happy Easter removing the comma, trim that fairly close, and I'm going to stick the Happy Easter onto my label, classic label. So I'm going to stick it towards one end. That should work. Bit of a fiddle, but it's how to get more value from one sentiment. I could have put the whole thing on, happy Easter, happy spring, happy everything, done it exactly the same size as the previous card, but let's just show you how, or remind you because I'm sure I've done this before. Trimming down sentiments gives you even more value, and I don't want it full length, so I'm going to trim that off a little bit. I'm not going to trim it entirely close to the sentiment because I do want to maybe pop that underneath a leaf or something like that, like I have done there. Something like this, and then I know I can pop some flowers, so let's just trim that a little bit more. Not too much. And I'm going to stick that down again with wet glue. I was trying to remove some wet glue from my finger because it ends up sticking to everything. Let's go like that. And I quite like this little leaf just wrapping round. There we are. So now I know I can decorate the rest of the wreath, and I can cover over that end with a flower or two. And as always, I usually sort of lay out any flowers if I'm decorating. I lay them out rough first and then stick them down. You can see how that's just coming to life now. Oh, glue on my fingers. It's an occupational hazard. I am sure you will agree. There, I think we'll just go ahead and stick those down. Quite simple. So what I can use for this to make my life easy is the putty end, my take your pick tool, and I can lift the flower, dot the glue, put the flower back down. I might need to use my fingers. That makes life a bit easier. And just stops me from getting too gluey. Sometimes when you've shaped your flowers and they're all sort of cup shaped like this, you need to go back in and give them a bit more pressure. Like this one that's jumping up, I knew it would, so you can use something like that. Put this one down here, I think. Are you stuck? Look how this putty, once you start turning it, it starts to come out. It feeds itself out. Such a handy tool. And I think that must be the last one. I think we've worked all our way around now. Yes. So there we are. Again, quite quick. And I know I pre-stamped and pre-die cut those little flowers. That really didn't take a great deal of time to do that card. I'm just going to pop some bling on it. I'll just have a little quick tidy up of those scraps, and we'll have a look at some bling now. The bling I've got out for this one is the one that I used on this one. That's the gold glitter enamel dots. Now these, the adhesive is so strong on these that sometimes it leaves the foil behind, so I find actually to use my fingernails is one of the best things to pick them off. Alternatively, take your pick tool, but you really need to make sure you're getting under or the very pointy end of your snips. And I think I just popped one in the middle of the big flowers. That's all. Oops, wasn't quite centre. One of these medium ones. Like so, and then we'll have a couple of others just sort of scattered. There we go. And I think that just finishes that off. I'm quite pleased with this. I decided to go with Mango Melody as a bit of a brighter colour, and the Poppy Parade as a brighter red. I think I used, I might have used terracotta tile on this one, and was it Bumblebee on this one, and I just felt that these colours were a little bit brighter. So same but different, as I like to say. So let me have a look at time. We've only been an hour. Ooh, thank you. I'm just having a quick look at comments. Hi Lorna, Lorna's made it eventually. Oh bless you, it's lunch break. Now I could show you an extra card using these dies. One that I made for my hairdresser and my friend to congratulate her. And I just have to gather, let me just see, what do I need? I just need a card base to start with. So if you've got time to stay with me, bear with me, and I'll just grab some Whisper White cardstock and we'll just go for an extra bonus. So in fact, fortunately, I have a Whisper White card base here. It's already been scored. So this has been scored tent style. So it's half an A4, 10.5, and I've scored it again at 15. And I could either use it portrait or landscape. I'm going to use it landscape, and I'm going to do some stamping across just to show you how pretty this stamp set is. So I'm going to use these flowers, and I'm going to use the colours that I've already got out because that'll save me from cleaning them. So I've got Poppy Parade, Mango Melody, and somewhere I've got So Saffron over here. So they're my colour scheme, and I'm going to do a really simple stamping sort of background collage. So let me just pop each one with its relevant colour so I don't get them mixed up. And I'm going to start with So Saffron. This is a bit of a bonus card. Very simple card, and I'm going to go on a diagonal across the card, stamping quite randomly. And this may not be an Easter card. It may end up being something different entirely. Let's have one down there. So I've just gone in on a diagonal across my card base with one colour. Let's build this pattern now. This is similar to a card that I made for my hairdresser, but not entirely the same. So same but different. For hers I did a rainbow pattern, and I will post a picture of it. I actually did rainbow colours, sorry, not a rainbow pattern, rainbow colours. Did you see I overthought that stamping? Don't overthink it, just stamp. And it doesn't matter if your images actually overlap, just stamp. Don't think, just stamp. There we are. And now I'm going to go for our third colour. That was Mango Melody. Started with So Saffron, Mango Melody, and now we're going for Poppy Parade, that lovely clear bright red. And I'm going to go in with this small flower. And now I'm going back in and filling where my eye's telling me there is some white space in the middle, so I can group them quite closely together. Doesn't matter. That's our third colour. Now I'm going to go to the dies, and I'm going to get this one. I'm going to cut a piece to lay across the top, and I'm actually going to use shall I use vellum or shall I use a colour? I'm just having a think. This is me making it up as I go along. I'm going to grab a piece of vellum, I think. So I'm going to grab a piece of vellum and make myself a vellum layer. So I'll just run that through the machine. Let's just trim that down a bit. And actually let me bring in the little machine. Tripping over my chair. I'm so happy that I've mended my chair, it's not squeaky anymore. Just building up my layers. Let's run this one through. Ooh. Ooh. I don't know what I'm doing there. Doing something wrong. Doesn't want to go through. Oh, that's better, I think. That's better. I think I've got it too far to one side and it was catching. And it's slipping all over because I've got it on a grid sheet. So that's not good. I'm going to end up with lots of bits everywhere. So I'm just rubbing this and most of the bits are falling out. So fantastically, it's not all stuck in the die. Yeah, and what I find is just some nice, I don't want to say pressure, but I just rub it between my fingers and thumbs and all those little bits come away. I'll bring that up to the camera, some of the smaller bits. There we go, let's get these bits out. Some of the tinier bits, like the little dots, you might just have to use a dye brush or something for, but pretty much they're all coming away. Guess who's going to be vacuuming her craft room later on? Get that little bit out of there. Ooh, I'm quite pleased with that. I've made myself a vellum doily. So let's have a look. Where's my lint roller? See how much I can pick up using that. Get rid of some of those bits. Pretty much all of them actually. Just a few left. Right, so let's have a look at that card base again. And let's have a look at what that looks like with a vellum doily over the top. And I'm going to add a stamped sentiment across, and I'm going to use that, I think I'm going to use, I might use Happy Birthday. And I want to use this stamp. That's quite a curly vellum doily, I have to say, but when I stick it down with the sentiment over the top, that should lay flat. So let me get a block, and shall I go for, does Happy Birthday fit in there? I don't know whether Happy Birthday actually fits inside. I don't think it does. So let's go with Thinking of You. It's more like thinking on your feet. And I've not used this before, and I've not lined it up before, and as it's a red rubber stamp, this could be an interesting live on air experiment. Pretty risky. Pretty risky, but hey, nothing ventured, nothing gained. That looks nice. Now, if I was going to advise you of anything, I would probably advise you to use Stamparatus stamp positioning tool, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go for it. I think I might have got away with it. Probably if I was doing this again, I might use my stamp positioning tool to really get that centred, but I'm reasonably happy with the straightness of it. And if anything, we should embrace our inner wonk. Wonky is the new straight, everyone. And I'm going to use this die just to cut that sentiment, and I'm going to whiz that through my mini machine. Now, I've got little bits of vellum everywhere, and I'm just switching my plates around, so using a different plate for the bottom. Let's hope I can just keep this straight. Oh, that's not even on. There we go. Good grief, Isabel. I've got a feeling that's just moved. Let's just take a breath and take our time to line that up a bit better. That might be better. Apologies for that faffing, but sometimes a faff is a good faff. If you know what I mean. We can see something coming together now. I think what we might need is some ribbon, I think. I'm going to try and just uncurl this vellum. I'm not quite sure how. I kind of want to do this, but obviously I can't because it's a doily now. But I'm sure it's going to stick down. If I run a tape glue across, I'm just measuring up how wide that is. I think that just needs something underneath it, and I'm not quite sure what it is yet, so let's just have a look. Does it need some ribbon? Let me have a quick look. I've got some. Oh, is anybody saying anything? Anybody out there got any comments? Any suggestions about what this needs underneath? Just to make that pop a little bit. Let's have a think. I've got some yellow ribbon here. I think it's Daffodil Delight. It might be enough contrast. Is anybody typing anything? I've probably sent you all to sleep. Let's just put the let me just put a loop of ribbon underneath. Yellow something, thank you Sylvia. It does need yellow something, doesn't it? It either needs yellow ribbon, I don't think that's enough, or it needs yellow label, an extra label, a larger label like this fancy label. Let's have a go. Let's just grab a piece of yellow cardstock. Now we had some saffron left here, didn't we? So let's just chop. Just trim that off so it's straight. And then if we trim, I'm going to go for a slightly thinner. Ooh, that's not straight. Like a 4 centimetre wide piece. Oh, 2.4. 3.7. I've actually got some measurements on this one. You see, this tag topper punches 3 different widths, and I've actually written my widths on, so 5 centimetres, 3.7 and 2.4. So let's go for the 3.7. Looks like it might be wider than 3.7, but hey. Let's trim that end. That looks pretty much bang on. That's kind of doing it for me, I think, at the moment. And we can bling it up. So it's just an extra layer of something, wasn't it, that needed to help it pop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be brave, and I'm going to put some tape glue, and I'm going to decide that it needs to go from that flower there to that flower there, she said, and that flower there across to that flower there, and we can stick this doily down. And of course, what I was thinking was that you're going to get sticky through the doily, so this layer, this tag layer, and I'm not worried about the holes because I'm going to cover the holes up, so this tag layer can go across there, and that should help with that glue. So I'm going to put more tape glue on the back. And some tape glue on the back of my sentiment, and we'll just pop that over the tag. And I think we can pop some bling on. Just pop something on there to bling it up a bit. What have we got out? We've got those. Oh, I know what we'll do. Ooh, I'm just dropping things off screen. We'll go and have a look at sequins, because I've got a feeling that these sequins that I always love could work, these yellow ones, so we'll pop some of those on. So these are the Artistry Bloom sequins. I'm still going strong. I've only ever had one packet right from the beginning of the last annual catalogue, or the current annual catalogue, and I've used so many on lots of different projects. I can't believe how long they're lasting. Let's go up here. And they just seem to match whatever colour I use. I seem to be able to find one that will match. Here we go. Oh, I'm overthinking it again. It's a little bit of bling. So I used 2 of the yellowy tones and 3 of the pinky tones, and they've just given it a bit of sparkle. So I'm quite pleased with that. Impromptu, just because simply I'm in love with these dies. I am just so in love with these dies, and I couldn't just stop at one card. And I was thinking about it this morning while I was in the garden. I was thinking, oh, should I go for another card? Oh, I don't know whether I'll have enough time, but I really love them. So yeah, so I'm going to finish there. I'm just actually, my battery is telling me that it's low, and I can't believe that, so I'm just going to plug in a power cord. Bear with me because I don't want to lose you. There. Oh gosh, that worried me then. It's a good job I looked at the screen. So I'm going to finish there. I'm going to spin you round and say goodbye. Let me get myself seated comfortably. And here I am. Thank you so much for watching. If you've watched me live this afternoon at this lunchtime, if you're watching me on catch up and you're watching me after March 2021, then please ignore the host code information at the beginning of this video, and please don't try and use that host code. Of course, if you are watching me on catch up, thank you for tuning in, and give my page a like on Facebook and a subscribe on YouTube, and that'd be really helpful. And if you do love what you've watched today, please feel free to share with your friends. And of course, please feel free to share your makes with me. You can share them with me in a private message, you can message me, or you can share them freely on my group page, which is the Crafty Beehive. And there'll be a link to the Crafty Beehive on my Izzy's Crafty Bees Facebook page. So please always share your makes, always really happy to see what you've been making. So thank you again for joining me. Bye for now. Stay safe, stay happy, but keep crafting. Whatever you do, keep crafting. Lots of love.